I am live now. Hello, everybody. And what I mean that is everybody who will actually be viewing this, even if you're not viewing it right now, you will be viewing it shortly when you get into your Google, your Facebook, or your YouTube. My name is Ruben Arizmendi, and I have for you today a very special guest who I'll introduce in just a moment. I want you to understand that I am an attorney that handles estate planning matters, including probate. And so what I mean by that is that I help prepare living trusts and all the documents that are associated with living trusts, which are powers of attorney, pour over wills, etc. The idea here that we have our discussion today is to focus on probate because so many people, unfortunately, do not know the importance and do not give the importance of doing your living trust in order to avoid the probate. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to multitask here. We're admitting people as we go along. I'm an attorney who has over 30 years experience in this area of the law, both probates and living trusts, and asset protection, by the way. I would like you to meet somebody that I'm going to tell you a little bit about, Erik Kaiser. And I have to admit, I use glasses to read. Erik Kaiser is a residential real estate specialist with primary focus in probate and trust sales with RE/MAX Terrasol here in Southern California. Erik started his career in 1991, with RE/MAX at the age of 19. He sold his first home that very same year. Erik is also a certified AR appraiser formerly from 1993 to 1996, and currently sells approximately 25 probate and trust estate homes a year with a seller-focused perspective. And, as we go along, I'm hoping that that'll become clearer and clearer to you. So Erik, please share with us some information about what's going on with real estate and today and how you can provide some insight if someone is selling an estate home and what could be the pitfalls that we want to avoid through that process. Okay?
Well, thank you, Ruben. I appreciate your time and being offered the opportunity to join you on the Zoom. And I've got some really good stuff to share with you. And it's kind of interesting in today's market in Southern California, it is still a really strong seller's market. And what we're seeing is how COVID affects a seller in that process. So right now, with what's going on with COVID-19, there are a few restrictions as far as being able to market the property. A lot of times we cannot do open houses. We have to do what's called a virtual open house. So it just restricts the property a little bit being exposed to just about anybody in the neighborhood. Sometimes neighbors just walk by the property and want to see it. 11% of the time, a buyer will come from a neighbor or a friend just there in the neighborhood that may see a sign or see an open house sign. So it restricts it just a little bit, but as everybody's doing now, we're kind of going online to market ourselves and market our products and services. So there's a little learning curve there, but people are taking to it and it's becoming pretty effective as well. So there's some things that are changing. As far as the forms, there are forms that need to be completed if you are going to view or if one is going to view a property. And it's just, we want to make sure that they're fully qualified. So they typically have to submit a pre-approval letter. They have to view the photos online first. There's got to be some sort of interest. So it does save a little bit of time, in weeding out the looky-loos. And so I think, to some degree, it is a benefit with COVID. We're not really seeing any slowdowns of buyers viewing properties or putting offers in. So as long as a property is still priced correctly, we're not really seeing anything in the marketplace kind of pulling back due to COVID. In fact, over the last 3 to 4 weeks, we've seen a very strong buyer activity in the marketplace.
Oh, nice. In other words, you haven't really seen any slowing down of the market at all. It's just keeping its pace, so to speak.
Yeah, I think in the luxury market, obviously that's kind of taking probably a little bit longer, but not by much. Everything under $1 million seems to be still, kind of flying off the shelves, as so to speak.
Good, good, fantastic. How do you see the values, the property values, though? They're maintaining here in Southern California? They're pretty much
Yeah,
the same.
Yeah, I think the values are still actually climbing. What I've experienced, and I've got about, I think, eight listings, and what I've been seeing in my offers and in my escrows currently is that appraisers are having more of a difficult time in finding comparable sales to justify the price increases. And I'll share a little bit about that in, strategies and things for sellers to be aware of in that process. But that's basically what's going on there is they're just having a tougher time justifying their values for the lenders to loan on those properties.
Okay. Well, before you get to that, why don't we talk a little bit about some of the biggest mistakes that the administrators, that is somebody who's actually in a probate, or an executor who's got a will that they're handling, or even a trustee who's administering a trust. What are some of the biggest mistakes in selling an estate that they tend to make?
Well, Ruben, that's a great question, probably the most important question. A lot of times what you're seeing now, what you've seen in the last few years is the wholesalers, the flippers, the investors kind of attacking the administrators or executors and driving them crazy in that process. I'm sure you can appreciate that, and you understand that your clients get a lot of calls from people wanting to buy their property without really understanding the value and what's involved. So some of the pitfalls, I would say, are going with the local neighbor, the friend, the family member that may not have the experience in dealing with investors and understanding how to negotiate prices and or repair costs when dealing with a property that is not going to be fixed up. And or if it is going to be fixed up, what are those actual prices and those estimates for completing the rehab work before you target a retail buyer for full market value? So those are the two biggest that I see that become an issue. And also with people not really understanding, the experience of the agent they're hiring. A lot of times in the MLS, it will cross-link directly with Zillow, for example. So you can just type in someone's name on Zillow, and you'll be able to see, it's very transparent, connects. So you'll be able to see their production level, what they sold. You'll be able to notice, are they working primarily with buyers or sellers? Those are very important. If you're working with an agent that has only done or only sold 2 properties and there were buyers per year on average, as opposed to someone that sold more working focused with a focused, working with sellers, then you're going to see that difference in experience. And when that happens, you get into deals where you're not really sure, because you could accept a really high offer, but if the home doesn't appraise, then you have to renegotiate that down. Then you run into other issues where if you're working with an investor or even a smart agent on the other side working with the buyer, they'll basically come back with repair costs that are going to, they're going to submit a request for repairs that is probably going to drop your price even more. So there's a lot of things to consider that the normal agent or typical agents don't consider in their negotiations, and they just don't understand. They want to get the property tied up with the highest price, but that's not always the best situation. So having an agent understanding the aspects of comparable sales, what it's going to take to rehab the property, do your initial inspections, your termite work. If it's got a foundation crack around the stucco, you should have that prepared. Those are minimal costs to make sure that you can accept the best offer possible. So having all the information, working with someone that knows all of this, it's not about just listing a home and marketing it. There's so much more on the back end that people have no clue about. So that's really important. It's hard to go into it all now, Ruben, but in my experience, every new sale is a new challenge. There's always something that comes up, and understanding how to handle that. So there's a lot of things to go into for sure. And I'm available for anyone online if you want to reach out to me anytime, private message me, give me a call. No problem at all. I can answer additional questions there as well.
Erik, you gave us some really keen insight as to what could be some of the pitfalls, and I appreciate that. I do have a viewer who is sending me an email. Shalene, it says, we have completed a probate and have an administrator of the estate. We haven't missed a mortgage payment the past 2 years. the house is in the name of the estate, is it better to assume the loan, refi, or buy the house to transfer to our name? What's the best way?
Well, I think you're definitely going to have to refinance the home and put it in your name or your new trust's name. I definitely think if it's in, from my understanding, Ruben, I don't know if you can share this, but if a home is still in the name of the estate and the probate may be still active, if it hasn't closed out, then obviously when it closes out, I believe it's ready to be transferred. But yeah, you
That's
definitely want to get
exactly
it in your.
accurate. You nailed it there, Eric. You're absolutely right. This is a case that I actually have become familiar with, and it is the scenario is that we went entirely through the probate. The son of the decedent wanted to keep the property and decided to just continue making payments. And of course, the title to the property is in the estate's name. So if you can help us with that insight.
Yeah, I think that after an estate, probate estate closes and all the disbursements are made, I think it's definitely you have to put it in someone's name. It has to be either refinanced but obviously a CPA or an attorney are the best ones to advise as far as the cost savings and how to do that correctly. As I'm not an attorney for sure, Ruben, but definitely you got to put it in your name and that or in a trust, and that's going to be really, really important.
Great. Thank you for that question. I hope we answered your question. She hasn't done a follow-up question, but that's okay. The idea was to either leave it in the son's name or make it do a refi or simply somehow make a new loan. I think those were the questions, but I think we covered that, and I appreciate that. By the way, there's some people that came online. I don't have everybody that's come online, but I do know that there is another realtor, a colleague of yours, so to speak, who's listening in, and I appreciate that, Greg Scott. I don't know if you know Greg Scott, but he's more an investor, developer, and he's joined us before on these type of talks, and welcome to the talk, Greg. Thanks for coming on. Let me ask you another question here, Eric. What are some of the solutions in protecting the estate and making sure you obtain the best price for the least amount of hassle?
Well, definitely, I think that the best protection that I would tell anyone to do is obtain or start create a trust, right? So that's going to be the biggest thing you can do is creating a trust to protect the estate, protect the property, and protect your family moving forward. It's such a minimal cost. If it amazes me, Ruben, that there's so many properties out there that still are not in a trust or the owners do not have a trust. So I could say if you have parents that are older or if you're a baby boomer, you want to definitely reach out to Ruben. He can assist you create a trust because I see it all the time. I sell about 20 properties plus a year. I work with sellers and I just see the expense that they have to go through. I think what's said is if you don't have an estate plan, the state's going to have one for you, and it's probate, and it can cost you just in working with the court systems and attorneys, it could cost you upwards of $20,000. And then if you have additional beneficiaries and you're selling the property, you're looking at, probably an additional $20,000 or $30,000. So it's a huge savings for the minimal amount of money that people can spend on creating a trust is just really crucial. It's money well spent in protecting yourself or your family or your future inheritance from loss. And they deal with it every month. And it's a huge expense that doesn't need to happen. And I think more people should reach out and create those trusts for themselves and their families.
Right. Oh, thank you very much, Eric, for that response, because it's almost like you're plugging me for some reason. Okay. No, I appreciate that. We did get a response from Shalene. She says we were starting to transfer the name, the title, when COVID hit, And now that the banks are reopening their other services, we are attempting again. And thank you for your answer. Okay, so she really appreciated your help. And I want to say the same thing. We appreciate your help on that. I did have some other questions that occurred to me as we were going along here, Eric. Um, I know that there's a thing that's actually, I'm not sure the proper term. I heard it before, but it's setting up the scenario so that the home looks better. What do they call that again? Or
Staging, maybe.
staging. That's the word I'm looking for. And so, do you actually get involved in the staging itself too?
Oh yeah, we can do that. Just depends on the property and what the client wants. It just all depends. A lot of the properties I deal with need a lot of work. So the first thing we have to do is to just evaluate any repairs and to see if they want to, or the sellers want to target and invest that little amount of money to target a retail buyer or kind of like an investor. So those are the first things. And then getting into the staging and the marketing and the photos that comes in afterwards. But, I'm hands-on, Ruben, start to finish, from everything from, creating family heirlooms, shipping them across state, to photography, to connecting with all of our vendors, stagers, and everything else. So staging does offer a huge benefit as well, just so it's going to show a lot better in the photos. It's just going to appeal to the buyers a little bit better. And definitely works great for luxury properties for sure.
I see. Okay, that's good to know. But that kind of brings up a little bit of a question that I've been faced with clients who say, "Will it get me more bang for the buck, so to speak, if I invest money into fixing up the house? Am I going to be able to get that money back when I sell?" I think there are people that are more concerned when they're possibly doling out 5, 10, $15,000. They're thinking, "Whoa, am I going to see that back on the sale?" And that's I get that question all the time, and I said, "Well, let's talk to your realtor. Maybe he has a good answer for that, he or she."
Yeah, I definitely think you're going to get the best return on your money is they say when you're rehabbing a property is our kitchens and bathrooms for sure, but paint and carpet are the things that I recommend. And there's just little things you can do. 15,000 is not a lot to fix up a property. Prices have risen on everything. So typically it's probably closer to 20,000. Just in flooring and carpet, you're looking at probably 5,000 typically for a 3 to 4 bedroom home. Painting exterior, interior could be, anywhere around 6,000. So you're looking at maybe some new doors, another few thousand, just the minimal amount of work needed, maybe some new landscaping, another few thousand there, either sprinklers, greening up the lawn. So taking care of all this in one time, it's a huge benefit. Now that, it still is a seller's market in Southern California. I think it always will and always has been. There's just so many people here and the economy is still rather strong. So you're going to find people wanting to pay for top dollar for property, even if it's not fixed up entirely like a new home. You'll see a lot of the time where people are talking about not really sure what to put into the property or selling it as is. You're gonna find that primarily outside of California, unless you're dealing with someone that just doesn't understand the marketplace. Because Southern California is a seller's market. There's no reason why you should not, I think, probably do a little minimal rehab to fix up a property. And that's one thing that I specialize in. If my clients don't have the funds, I provide those up front. But providing enough information.
You actually anticipated my next question. What if they don't have the money? And you just said that. You guys actually.
Yeah. Yep, I provide all those costs up front. We just get reimbursed out of escrow. There's no points or interest or anything like that charged to the client, and it's just gonna be for a better overall value point for the seller, because right now there's so many buyers in the marketplace. There has been for the last couple of years, and the way prices are still climbing to some degree, that there's probably no reason why anyone should not want to put a little bit of money into the property. You're going to get 2 to 3 times your money back, I think, doing that.
Eric, I'm pretty sure you were around for that nightmare we had back in 2008, or you knew of it for sure. And do you anticipate seeing anything like that happening? Certainly not with the COVID situation. It hasn't happened, right?
Ruben, that's an interesting thing. When I started in 1991, when everybody else was partying in college, I was in the trenches selling real estate and saw the 88 situation where, in 91 rates were 10.5 dropping to 7.75, and that was good, and they kept dropping. So I've seen it a couple times. The typical cycle is 10 to 18 years is what they've kind of taught us in college, and just kind of what we've seen typically in the marketplace as we look past from the past. As far as going into next year, it's hard to say because I think we have a lot of things to consider. We have some people have termed it the silver tsunami, where we might have a lot of aging parents or people that plan, or they don't plan on it, but they're just going to end up passing away, unfortunately. It's just the facts. So we have that to consider. It doesn't matter really probably who gets elected in the election. Obviously, the economy, I think, does real well for the first year or two. People are excited. But it also depends if rates climb a little bit because of some uncertainty, maybe a year down the road. And then in California, we have, the situation where maybe a baby boomer has a second home that they're renting out. And now that there are restrictions on them receiving full amounts of their rent in certain locations and situations, that could be a factor of them selling that as well. So there's a few things that can really go on. We don't really know yet. What I'm telling my sellers now is, if you've got a property and you can sell it, I would say put it on the market in the next month, because we don't really know what's going to happen next year. And then we've got all the restaurants and people that work there that are out of work. And then if there are people that are not paying their mortgages and are defaulting or going to default, unfortunately, then you're going to have a few new foreclosures hit the market. I don't know what those percentages are, but we have all these things kind of affecting it. That's what I see. It's still the unknown, but it's still the what could happen. So it's going to be hard to say. But if we follow the statistics of the past, then I would say in the next 5 years, we're probably due for some sort of correction or leveling off, so that people's income, the economy can catch up to the values of the home, so everyone can afford a home, basically. But we're definitely short of housing. There's just so many people in California. So there's a lot of variables. No one has the right answer. No one has a crystal ball. We just have to see how things go and just kind of take it from there.
Erik, I don't know if I fully asked the question about restrictions here in the age of COVID-19. Did we address that, you think, pretty thoroughly? Or?
Well, I think we talked about some restrictions in just showing and selling a property. There are other restrictions depending on the area, as far as if you own an investment property, as far as being able to accept your rent, or you do have to take a discount on that rent from your tenants. Is that a legal requirement or not? Of course, I don't like to ever quote legal issues, but there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace with where the state is going and how it affects investors who own multiple properties in dealing with tenants. So that's going to be coming as well, and we're just going to have to see how that plays out.
Are you familiar with what's happening in terms of the evictions? I know that's not your specialty area, but I know that it can impact both homeowners and the renters substantially. I knew that there was a freeze, but I don't know if that's been lifted. Do you know?
Yeah, I haven't dealt with a lot of in evictions. I haven't dealt with a lot of that lately, so it's hard for me to say. I don't have the right information on that, but I can only say that it's going to affect it, I think, next year. There's something's got to adjust a little bit there as well.
All right. Okay. I don't know if you had something that you're going to ask me too, or because I thought we talked a little bit about, maybe you had a question or two for me that we can share.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to ask you, as far as I know we've kind of been in certain situations where we're both on the same side, but what are your kind of nightmare situations that you can share? Because I know from my side, but I wondered how you view them as well from your clients, dealing with real estate and with beneficiaries and things like that.
Yeah, I do have the scenario that comes up frequently, and it's not exclusively with respect to real property, though. You know, there are many beneficiaries that feel that they've been slighted, that this is not what the decedent wanted, the settlor, the trustee wanted, that somebody was involved in some undue influence there and fraud and coercion. And that comes up even though you have a trust that is airtight, well done, well prepared. You're still going to have that situation where somebody feels slighted and wants to come back and say, "Hey, this is wrong," you know, and then it's going to impair your ability to sell the property sometimes because that person said, "Well, mom wanted me to have this property," for example. One of the worst, or one of the most difficult scenarios that I had nightmarish wise. And so is one that I had in a real property in Los Angeles, where for better or for worse, the daughter of the decedent, who was, you know, she was quite advanced in age also, uh, because of financial reasons, was not able to pay the taxes on the property. And that case scenario created substantial difficulties because the uh, the tax bill that had actually gone to a lien, and there was a lien on the property. We were trying to get the property sold. We were trying to make sure that it didn't go to a tax sale because she had delayed that for so long and not taking care of it for so long that there was the threat of a tax sale. And what we did was we made a partial payment, and that just triggered a whole new period where the tax sale was just postponed for another year. And that's the way we were able to take the time to get the property sold, and everybody was really happy that we didn't lose this to tax sale, which would have been one of the worst case scenarios because obviously the property is worth far more than the tax liability.
Yeah. Yeah, Ruben, I think you bring up a great point there. I definitely see your perspective on dealing with those hard situations as I do. And one thing that I was involved with, I deal with a few issues with trust litigation and selling property, and it's typically a lot of times is, you know, you'll have parents put both of their children on as trustees, and that's where the fighting comes in. And the only people that win at that point are the attorneys that do trust litigation. And I've seen it, I've been through it, and it's a sad situation because no one wins. And a lot of times they should think about possibly, maybe in my perspective, maybe a fiduciary or someone else that can act in that capacity, or just picking one trustee, because I've run into those situations and it's a nightmare. So I would say anybody watching this, if you've got two trustees, it's not legal advice, but definitely reach out to Ruben, because there's a lot of things that we can't share on, obviously, this webinar, this video, that we've been through, that you probably have no clue of what's about to hit your family when you pass. And I think that's really important, because a lot of times, even Ruben, with the beneficiaries, you know, people don't understand, as agents, part of our job is making sure that they're informed if needed, because the last thing one wants is you get a great price and negotiate a great deal on a piece of property, and you've got one of the 6 or 9 beneficiaries that thinks you sold it too low and should have done something different. So I think it's important working with an agent as well as understanding how to be accountable to everybody involved, not just the administrator or executor, because there is accountability there down the road that you have to answer to other people, not just, you know, you could potentially have to answer to other people, and just provide factual information of why you do something or why you don't do something. That's really important. And again, that comes with experience.
Yeah, and you know what? I do mention that to my clients. I tell them, look, I'm glad to know that your children all get along, that there's a very loving family, and their family gatherings, and everybody's very happy with each other, not likely to get angry. The unfortunate thing is that money changes people for some reason. And, and you have people who say, well, you know, mom didn't want that, or dad didn't want that, and I was supposed to get more of this. And it's just, maybe it's a natural human reaction to, okay, we've lost somebody we love, but I know that they wanted me to have more. You know, it may be that, you know, and the papers, somebody interfered with the paperwork. and it's not right. And that does come up. That's a nightmare situation that does come up from time to time. And this is really why I tell people ahead of time in my discussions with them, if they're going to do a trust, take into consideration that you may have the most kindest and loving of children right now, that sometimes it changes. Sometimes it changes, and that's unfortunate. I'm thinking specifically in another nightmare scenario that I had was a lady whose husband died unexpectedly at a relatively early age, but because of the nature of his business, he had $1 million policy on his life. She got this $1 million. She invested in two different pieces of property, and her two sons, unfortunately, were involved in an addiction that they couldn't break away from. And so now the question was for them, how do we get these properties sold so that really quick, so that we can get the money and use it for what we need to use it for. And that was a nightmare situation because because when I set up the trust for this lady, I told her, you have to put in protections. You have to put in protections. And she did. She went outside and she got her brother and her niece involved in being the trustees. And they're responsible people, even though they're not experienced fiduciaries. They are people who really wanted to see mom's wishes being carried out. As a matter of fact, one of her wishes was that when she set up her funeral, she wanted a bunch of flowers and a bunch of mariachis. So they actually complied with that request, and it was quite. It was almost like a party. Yeah, there are all kinds of nightmare scenarios that can really be avoided if people just sit down and talk it out. Talk it out. Sometimes that's the solution. Many
Yeah,
times.
Ruben, I thought of another scenario that a lot of times that people don't really understand is, if someone is married, if a son or daughter is married and obviously the parent passes away, a lot of times if that relationship is not good with the son or daughter and there's a divorce right on the horizon after that, there could be all sorts of issues. Is that correct? Where they could lose, the son or daughter could lose half their inheritance based on a bad situation there. So I'm sure you could protect them in that scenario, I would think.
Yeah. The one thing that most of the beneficiaries, sons or daughters, should be aware is that obviously the property going to them is their separate property, and so that's a huge advantage. Any inheritance, anything that comes through by way of will or trust or probate is the separate property of the inheriting person, the son, the daughter. And so the spouse really does not have a community property interest in the property until time goes by, and then maybe the spouse then acquires a somewhat of a community property interest in the property. And so if the son wants to maintain that separate property status, he's going to be better off setting up a trust himself with respect to that property. So that's the short answer there. Okay.
Yeah, it's always been good to be clear on those things because I don't know, and I can only say these are things I come across, and it's always good to double check with the professionals.
Yeah, and Shalene's saying again another comment, which is kind of helpful. Yeah, it's super important to be very specific in your living trust, and that pretty much is what we were talking about right now. That might be a fitting note to close us out. We were designed to go from 10 to 10:30, and then open up for a bunch of questions, and I don't see a bunch of questions coming in. Was there something else? I'm sorry. Well, could we just take a brief pause here, if you don't mind, Eric?
Sure, no problem.
All the questions you covered?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, Eric. There was some things that I had to look at on our notes, and I understand that you could be adding to this discussion with some not necessarily PowerPoints, but some additional information that you'll be providing us, perhaps, that we can put up.
Definitely.
Yeah, that we'll be putting up on, in conjunction with this talk. It'll be up on the YouTube and on Google Docs and on our Facebook. It'll be well published. We'll be able to have some statistics as to who is, an analytics is what they're called, analytics, and as to who is tuning in after the fact, so to speak. And I do appreciate you taking your time. Are there any other final comments that you may want to have to share with us?
I don't have anything else to cover. I mean, there's so much to cover, but I think within our time frame, we've got all we can fit in there, unless any of the viewers have any comments as well as questions. And they can always reach out to me or visit my website, sfrprobates.com, and they can get a hold of me through my website and just kind of see the situations that I've been in, that they might currently be in, or who knows, they may face in the future. So there's so much to go into, Ruben, that we can't cover it all in half hour, but they can always reach out to us, which is great. And I can tell everyone, you have to set up a trust. You're just going to lose. Your family's going to lose if you do not do that. That's just a must. That's just my recommendation. If your parents don't want to spend the money, trust me, you want to spend the money for yourself. It's not that much money, and it'll protect you in the end.
And by the same token, Eric, now that you mentioned that, even if you set up a trust, it doesn't mean that you won't be selling all property. And if you do sell all property, you want to make sure you go with somebody like Eric, who's going to be able to do the proper staging, do the proper improvements on the home that are necessary, and get you the best possible price on your property. It's always a pleasure, Eric, talking to you and meeting with you. I appreciate you taking the time and effort to answer all of this for us, and I look forward to seeing you soon again.
Sounds good, Ruben. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and we'll connect soon.
Okay, you take care. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.